All right, everybody, welcome back. This will be podcast number 8 of the Recovery Lab podcast series. Again, my name is Drew Hassan, local fellow in recovery in Jackson, Mississippi. To give you a little brief history of things, my general opening spiel. So feel free to comment a lot. Give me constructive criticism, suggested topics, nominate people to be on the podcast. I feel like the more we can generate some interactivity with people, the more we can be of some benefit. If you have some helpful information relative to recovery or self-help in general, certainly feel free to comment. The typical example I give is that I saw on Facebook. This might even be a little bit outdated now, but it serves as an example that the Pines was giving away Narcan free, no questions asked. If you want to support the podcast financially, I'm certainly in favor of that. You can cash at me at #Daniel Hassan. Just so that she hears this and knows that I'm thinking about her. Denise, the pink eyes had me down and out for 2 weeks. So I don't have the McCoy House mixer up and running yet. But I promise I hope to have it up and running before next week's podcast. All right, so without further ado, Zed Thompson. Zed, thank you, buddy. I appreciate you taking up your Saturday morning to do this.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
You may actually have to speak maybe 10% louder.
Yep. How's that?
That's good.
That's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay. I like speaking softly.
I've never had to tell anybody that yet.
Yeah, let me scoot in just a little bit more. Okay. Yep. Zed Thompson. In 1996, a guy named George Sheldon started calling me Zed Thompson, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Do you get a whole lot of the Zed's dead baby?
I used to. That kind of that's kind of passe. Isn't it? Yeah. That was until about 2005. It was Zed's dead. Now it just sounds like a tough name, doesn't it?
It does sound like a tough name.
But I'm not a tough dude.
I guess I'm aging myself, but literally every time I've told people I'm having Zed Thompson on the podcast, I can hear myself saying Zed's dead.
It's in there. It's ingrained in there. But yeah, my birth name is John Zachary Thompson. My professional name is Zach Thompson. But there's nothing better than hearing the name Zed. It's always kind of
you can mix it up a little bit.
Made me happy.
Yeah,
yeah,
keep people on their toes.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with
bad.
that. Yeah, my nephews and niece in the area, they all call me Uncle Zed, and I think that's just, it brings me joy.
It would.
It brings me joy. It's supposed to.
Yeah.
But Zach Thompson, I'm from Tupelo, Mississippi. Married my way to the Hinds County area. Happy to be here.
Well, based on the response on Facebook, Hinds County's happy to have you.
Hinds County's happy to have me. Well, that feels good.
It should.
There was a time where Hinds County
Sheriff was happy to have you.
Sheriff was happy to have me. Yeah, but then maybe he was like, "What's this dude doing? What's this dude doing?" There were a couple of years where Hinds County could have done without me, but I came back.
Well, redemption is the story we're driving here.
That's the story we're driving. That's the story we want to hear, right?
Amen.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear the whole story, but particularly the redemption.
Well, look, so tell us a little bit about what you do. What's your story?
Yep. So currently, I'm in the field of mental health. I've got a specialty treating post-traumatic stress disorder. Also other conditions, depressive conditions, anxiety conditions. I got started in the addictions field because I got sober. Right after I got sober, I did all the stuff that you do to become a therapist. So I quickly enrolled in a graduate program, left the work I was doing. I was working in a hospital, hooking up the video for laparoscopic surgery. I was in charge of all the video for laparoscopic surgery at Baptist Hospital, and that was interesting. That was active. It was crazy.
Weird hours, huh?
Well, it was 6 a.m. to probably 2:30, 3.
Well, I guess that's not too bad.
Nah, it wasn't too bad. So I left that, got a job at Kopak's IOP clinic out on Lakeland, and my job was to stand in the bathroom with the gentlemen while they peed. So that was my job, was to interact, be nice.
Not look down.
Well, my supervisor at the time wanted me to see
Direct
it happen.
observation.
Direct observation. I had to
No
watch it
Wizinator.
happen. No, yeah. I had to watch it happen, but I got used to it pretty quickly. It wasn't too bad. And then from there, I got invited to do an internship at Kopak, and then invited to be a counselor in training, I think, until I finished my master's. And then when I finished my master's, I came on board as a therapist and worked there until it closed. I was one of the last people to walk out of Kopak.
Well, how long have you been a bona fide therapist?
Bona fide therapist, not long, 5 years.
Well, that's not no time.
Bona fide therapist, 2000. I say I became bona fide in 2015, 2016.
Has it done for you what you thought it was going to do?
Oh,
has it fulfilled you the way you thought?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 It's greatly surpassed the image of what I thought this was going to look like.
Where did the seed come from that grew into?
Easy answer. I went to AA and experienced what I now understand as complete and total empathy. I read this definition of grace a few years ago. This guy, David Richo, neat author. Johnny Evans loves David Richo. There's a David Richo section in Lemuria, right by the Robert Johnson section, in the James Hollis, under the Jungian, in the Jungian area. David Richo very succinctly defined grace as the combination of compassion and forgiveness. So I didn't know that.
Let me interrupt you real
Please.
quick. So, because my mother and aunt have made a special request for this, can you spell Richo?
Richo.
Look,
David.
Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Okay.
I will post links for any books that are brought up.
Let's do that.
So,
yeah.
You have a specific book written by Mr. Richo.
Yeah, let's Shadow Dance. Shadow Dance, David Richo. It takes you through Carl Jung's shadow work. Carl Jung's.
And I guess I should say, even though I'll probably post Amazon links, you should go buy your book.
Yeah, don't buy Amazon. Go to Lemuria. It's a beautiful store. He's got everything. And I'll try to mention things that I know that he has. I'll try to be selective because that's a special place. I was there yesterday. So I went to AA and I experienced grace, the combination of compassion and forgiveness. That's what I experienced. It gobsmacked me. They would say that in England, I think. I was waylaid. I didn't know what it was, and then I continued to experience that. I received compassion and forgiveness every time I went. That was the only place I was receiving it. Right. But it kept happening, and then fast forward 6-8 months when I finally could string a sentence together. I had this, whether it was real or not, I had this feeling that I was part of this. So I was being helped. I was part of this pulse, if you will. I was being helped. And the things I said may or may not have helped others. And there was this feeling that I may or may not be helping others based on this interactive, fluid thing that happens in AA and other tight-knit spiritual groups. Something else takes over. And I felt like I was a part of that. So I felt like I was helping others. Again, whether I was or not at the time, it's not important for this question, but I felt like I was. And that was the best. That was the second best feeling I'd ever had. The first best feeling
A sense of purpose.
A sense of purpose, yeah.
A sense of belonging.
A sense of belonging that could be carried on, that could be passed on, that could be handed, freely given. So I chased it. And the only thing I could find that looked like that, the only construct, if you will, that looked like that out here in the world was a therapist. There had been a time in my life when I was probably in my mid-20s. I was an English and philosophy major, so I studied literature and philosophy at Ole Miss, and I've always loved to read. I've always been a reader ever since I was a little kid. So I've always loved stories, and I've always loved, been fascinated by the stories we tell and the lives we live. So there was a time in my mid-20s where I thought I wanted to go back and be a therapist, but I was drinking a lot, right? Drinking a lot, so didn't do it. So to answer the question that you asked about 3 minutes ago, right? Maybe even longer. I felt something that I inherently knew needed to be passed on.
Well, that is the mandate for us in recovery.
Absolutely.
To freely give
what has been given.
What was freely given.
Yep.
So you decide to go and become a therapist, and by all accounts, it has worked out well for you.
It's the greatest. Aside from having children and being a member of families, two wonderful families, the family I married into and the family I was born into. Aside from all that stuff, it's the greatest thing in the world. It's the best feeling in the world. The most purposeful, meaningful thing I've ever been a part of. Yeah.
So, because people obviously weren't privy to what we chatted about before I turned the microphone on, which I do need to look and make sure it is working right. All good.
We're good.
So, I asked Zed what he did, and he said that one of the things he led with was that you're involved in a team.
Yes.
That has an IOP.
Yes.
Intensive outpatient
program
for
post-traumatic stress disorder and codependency.
All right. I have lots of.
I'm
super curious about this.
Okay.
So, tell us about the intersectionality. Well, let me back up. I assume because you specifically state I have an IOP that treats PTSD and codependency.
Yeah.
That the PTSD sufferer will suffer outside of the realm of just addiction.
Yes.
So tell people about that. I think this is curious. I'm curious about this.
Ooh. Well, post-traumatic stress disorder is the giant. Codependency is the sleeping giant.
Believe me, I'm getting the codependency because I have some thoughts about this myself.
Ask me again about post-traumatic stress disorder. Ask me again.
Okay. So I typically hear of IOPs as being we're going to treat, bona fide addiction to a substance.
Yes.
Process disorders like eating disorders or gambling.
Yes.
Why is there a need for a PTSD IOP?
Because it is everywhere. Everywhere. One of the first places I noticed it, and this is looking back. I noticed it when it was happening, but looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. For example, I came from working in a surgical environment. So I worked in surgery at Baptist Hospital before I became a therapist. And I would bet, if I were a betting man, that most nurses working in that surgical environment would meet criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. I would bet that most emergency room practitioners meet criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder.
I don't know how you could not.
I would bet that most, I hate to pigeonhole, but I read a statistic one time. It was like close to 4 out of 5 women with a substance use disorder have co-occurring post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, women are certainly treated. I recognize that there is a difference between Susie Jones, and I'm making that name up. If there's a Susie Jones listening, I apologize. So I recognize that there's a difference between Susie Jones, who lives in 39110 and drives a Range Rover and gets hemmed up with her kids' Adderall. I recognize the difference between that and the people that I engaged with in intravenous drug use.
Sure.
That hole up in
Yes.
the Inns of USA or the motel.
Sure.
You know,
that environment in and of itself.
so women in that environment are much more treated like chattel.
Okay.
Property.
Okay.
Tangible good with which to a lot of times generate income or more awful things than the listener can certainly just imagine all on their own. Is that the kind of comorbidity you're talking about?
No, I'm speaking broadly here. Addiction. I don't want to say that addiction is always trauma, but addiction is damn near always trauma, and we're good at treating addiction.
Is it that? Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well,
Did the PTSD lead to the addiction, or was the PTSD incurred whilst in addiction?
I choose to step away from that question and just see them as coexistent conditions, and I'm not as concerned with which came first as I am ensuring that they're both treated.
Well, I think this is why I'm finding this so fascinating is the thing that could lead to PTSD for Bob will not lead to PTSD for Tom, because maybe Tom is more stoic, or he just is a little more anesthetized perhaps to something. So how does the person realize, I think I need treatment for PTSD? Because my friend Barbara went through this and she doesn't seem to suffer.
This is when we have to look at significant relationships. This is when we look at family members. Here's the codependent piece. I mean, the family members are suffering. The family members often step up. Or if a person's in a program for addiction, for whatever, and we what's the word I'm looking for? We bring the substance use disorder into remission, and then here come the underlying symptoms. Here come the other symptoms. That's one way to do it. Or we hear from the family members. The individual it can be an unreliable narrator for a significant amount of time. So we rely on the families to provide extra information, collateral information.
Are unreliable reporters.
But I appreciate the question. Sometimes the individual knows full well that they are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, that they're being narcissistically abused by a spouse, or that they've been in combat, or they've lived in, the basement of abandoned hotels, in, trap houses, or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes we get the information from the individual. Sometimes we get it as collateral information from the family. Sometimes it's just uncovered as part of the assessment process.
What is where does your business come from? Does you get referrals out of the addiction setting, or from therapists who say, look, you could maybe benefit from
both the residential facilities, some of the substance related IOP facilities will refer, after the individual completes an IOP program and they're ready to particularly or specifically work on the trauma. Yeah.
We've all heard that when you sober up a horse thief, you've got a sober horse thief.
Yeah.
I guess the same thing is true of somebody with PTSD. I mean, you sober them up, their trauma hadn't gone anywhere.
No, the trauma lives in the body, and that's what you treat.
So for the man or woman that's out there who has, let's say their life is not going swimmingly.
Okay.
And they're listening to this podcast and they wonder, I wonder if I have PTSD. What are some of the commonalities amongst people with it? What are some things that might lead a person appropriately to consider, I wonder if I've got this?
Well, there's a couple things to look at. Nightmares, frequent nightmares. That's my flags go up. My stomach is at attention when I hear that. An exaggerated startle response. Substance abuse. Dissociative states. People cowering. People with stories or reporting or experiencing, feelings that they're leaving their body or they're observing their own lives. Also, people who are so enmeshed, obsessed, involved in someone else's stuff. Like that can be a signal. What are you avoiding about yourself? Now invariably we have to bring these experiences into a formal assessment process. But yeah, if you're experiencing frequent nightmares, if there's a sound across the room and you jump, if you have no idea why you feel the way that you do, right? If you have no idea why you're waking up in the middle of the night sweating, if you're baffled by recurring nightmare themes that don't seem to correspond to your memories, that's something to look at, because the brain takes trauma and tries to protect you from it. It's got a pretty important job.
Compartmentalization.
Yeah, puts it over here and says, nope, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Jordan, I think it's Jordan Peterson, says that if you're thinking about something that happened greater than 18 months ago, and it's causing you any response today, then, and I can't quote him verbatim, but it's something like, you're living in the past, you're having some sort of trauma response. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I thought to myself, because there are some things in my past that are greater than 18 months old that I still don't like to think about.
Sure.
And I wonder, can you have a miniature PTSD?
Well, I mean, there's this, people talk about lowercase t trauma and uppercase T trauma. I mean, I think that kind of, I don't like to do that, because it can invalidate someone's heightened experience, because trauma is a subjective experience. I'm not going to say trauma is trauma the way addiction is addiction. It's, I mean, you get in there and you invariably encounter this gray area, but I'm not going to sit two people down and say, you've got lowercase t trauma and you've got uppercase T trauma. I've done that before, and I don't want to ever do that again, because I don't want anyone to feel like their suffering is unnecessary, irrelevant. or less than.
Immaterial.
Yeah. I read this quote one time, and I think about it quite a bit, that suffering is not a competition. And so when you've got people who are suffering, who are experiencing tremendous pain, they're defensive about it. They've worked hard to adapt to it. They protect it. And it's not uncommon for suffering to become a competition. So that's going to happen anyway, and I don't want to contribute to it even more. I want to bring a sense of compassion, a sense of grace. Back to that sense of grace. I want to begin to bring that sense of grace to a setting, and I certainly don't want to tell you that your trauma is less than his trauma or her trauma. I want to say yes, there is indeed trauma, and me, I have a protocol in my private practice where I try to follow, integrative protocol to treat it, and then the team I'm a part of, we also have an integrative protocol to treat the trauma. So that's what I want people to know, not that your trauma is less than hers. That yes, we can help. Yes, I can help.
I think I need to remind myself of that, because suffering is suffering.
Suffering is suffering. Yeah, suffering is...
What is the name of your team?
Oh, gosh, I love them so much. Lighthouse Healing Center is our IOP.
And if people wanted to call them, they would Google it, or it's on the Facebook?
I think it's Lighthouse Healing Center MS. Mississippi. I know it's on Facebook, Lighthouse Healing Center. It's on Instagram.
I'm going to try to like and follow and all
this.
Yes,
please do. We're new. I mean, we just opened, and we are. We would love to help in any way.
Well, look. So when Susie Jones
summons
up her courage and she enters into the PTSD IOP, what will you be happy that Susie Jones has learned or adopted into her life, and you would think, okay, she's well on her way to being out there on her own without the strict confines of IOP?
I want Susie Jones. I would bet that Susie Jones has a difficult relationship with her body. I would bet if Susie Jones comes in with let's make this a big deal, right? Let's be hyperbolic. Let's say Susie Jones has, just the worst trauma you can think of.
Awful husband.
Yeah, all that
absent
stuff.
father, alcoholic mother.
Let's say she was abused as a child. Let's say she has been in system after system of abuse, marrying into a relationship of narcissistic and physical abuse. Let's say Susie Jones has an eating disorder because of this. Let's say that there are myriad coexisting conditions: substance use disorder, eating disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression. Let's say this is the worst case scenario. I'm going to bet everything I got that Susie Jones has an unfortunate relationship with her body, or probably no relationship with her body. And
you say that like it. I think the way you say that, it means more to you than it's meaning to me. What is an
well? Okay, so let me go back to the way I am understanding trauma these days. My knowledge of this is that for years and years and years and years and years, post-traumatic stress disorder was a psychological condition. The more we're learning about post-traumatic stress disorder, it is a body condition. It is a condition of the nervous system. And the nervous system is connected to the brain, which is connected to the mind, which is connected to the spirit, which is connected to psyche, which is, as deep as it gets. But it's also connected to the body. The nervous system is the body. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a condition of the body. So I want to help Susie Jones create and maintain a good relationship with her body. I want that to be part of the program. The other part of the program is I want Susie Jones to be able to interact effectively in relationship with others. Because life, as we know it, is a series of relationships. You will not avoid, if you're living a life, you will not avoid relationships.
Sure.
Yep. So I want Susie Jones to create and maintain a good relationship with her body, and I want Susie Jones to have as good a relational capacity as she can. I want to bring those two things together. Body, relationships. There's an old quote in the Jungian. I practice from a Jungian perspective. Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist. Fascinated by his work. Fascinated by his work. I read. I mean, that's where I spend.
That's your guy.
Yeah. The Jungians especially. Jung was tough. He was a cool dude, but I don't know if you ever cracked open a book by Carl Jung. It's tough.
No.
It's tough. I've done it a bunch of times, and I'm glad I did it. But I appreciate the work that's been done around it. There's this really important sentence I had encountered when I was studying trauma from an analytical perspective, and analytical psychology is Jungian therapy, basically. So when you study analysis, you study the analytical practitioners and thinkers. So I was looking at trauma from an analytical perspective, and I saw this sentence, and I'll paraphrase it, but it's staggering that what has been broken in relationship can only be healed in relationship. So that speaks to the power of something like group therapy, but it also speaks to the power of a relationship with one's body, a relationship to one's spirit, a relationship to one's psyche. So I want to help with interpersonal relationships, and I want to help with the relationship that one has with body, soul, spirit, psyche, all that stuff.
So
Yep.
It's a week after Susie has been discharged.
Let's go.
She got her medallion and things are looking up, and she is confronted with some life stressor. I don't know. She felt undervalued at home. I don't know. Something happened.
Yep.
How does Susie deal with it in a way that makes you as a practitioner pleased?
Well, I would hope that during for example, approximately 10 weeks of intensive outpatient programming, I would hope that during that time, Susie Jones has changed significantly from the vascular level all the way up to the spiritual level. I would hope that she has changed tremendously. I would hope that, as we hear in AA, that Susie Jones will intuitively know how to handle the things that used to baffle
her.
Yeah. I would hope that upon interacting with that stressful, triggering thing, that Susie Jones would be able to stop, come back to the breath, and then if she has to do that 5 times in a row, somewhere in that process, Susie Jones will have intuitively known how to handle something that used to baffle her. And maybe it's, a page out of the boundary setting codependent part of the program where she gets to tell the truth, and she gets to hey, I'm gonna stop you there, and you can't talk to me that way. Or Susie Jones will have the strength to walk out the door gently. Susie Jones will intuitively know how to handle the things that she used to bow down to, or the things that used to kill her.
Yeah, cause an adverse respond adversely.
Sure.
It's such a fascinating topic. I mean, I really can talk about this kind of stuff all the time.
I can talk about it all the time.
Human behavior is
it's interesting.
It's eminently interesting.
Yeah.
So I went to treatment this last time that was effective, and lived in an Oxford house in Hattiesburg, and then I get back to Jackson, and I kind of had my sea legs about me when I got back to Jackson.
Good.
And I realized that I would ride by a seedy hotel, or I would see somebody, and I had not been exposed to that stimuli when I lived in Hattiesburg because, as I call it, Jackson is my epicenter of poor choices. And I think there is some...
Raymond, Mississippi was mine.
Right, there you go. And I think
Oxford.
there's some benefit to removing oneself from their epicenter.
Sure.
So I get back to Jackson, and it would trigger a feeling that I had not yet had to deal with. And I could sense, fortunately, brief, poor response to that.
Sure.
And in being flooded with thoughts of worthlessness and futility, a general sense of dread and hopelessness. Why would you bother getting sober? Blah, 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 blah. It's just a matter of time. You're never going to get over that, blah, blah, blah. And so I realized that there was some utility in employing the thought process I learned from a therapist long ago, because she would always ask me, what happened a couple days before? I'd go into her office and I'd be belly aching about something. So what happened? Let's talk about what happened the week before. Let's talk about what happened a few days before. And I realized that there is this, sometimes, at least in my experience, delayed response between the stimulus and then when it has its eventual reaction. And it's so interesting that the first thing you said was, I would hope Susie would take a step back. And there is always, like, I've got my worst problem today, at least manifests itself as having a temper. And so I have tried to build on, I've been listening to this Daily Stoic podcast, which I love and advocate for wholly. And the guy says, look, I don't remember who it is, Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, says if we can grow the space between stimulus and response, we will have done ourselves a service. And I think that's interesting. And it also supports what I have become to believe.
Everybody from Viktor Frankl spoke to that. Everybody from Viktor Frankl to the Buddha. I mean, that what you just talked about is so. It's such a spiritual truth. It's such a spiritual truth. The capacity to, for me, it's come back to the breath. Stay with, I try to stay with the breath as much as I can. I have a daily meditation practice. Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my.
I was just sitting here thinking about him.
That guy just he influenced me as much as Carl Jung did, as much as anybody did. So the spiritual, it's so simple. It's so simple. Coming back to the breath is a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual experience, and it allows that thing, that stimulus, to do what it needs to do. I want to let it do what it needs to do. I'm not supposed to put my hands on that.
Not be reactionary.
Yeah, I want to give whatever it is space to do what it's supposed to do, because I'm not supposed to mess with it. The trouble arises from me messing with it.
Right.
Me trying to control anything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do y'all do a lot of, I have had both CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is how one would generally go about changing their worldview a little bit.
Sure. What relationship do you have with your thoughts? What relationship do you have with beliefs? What relationship?
I have also been exposed to DBT. I think
dialectical behavioral therapy.
The rational mind and the
wise mind.
And
sure.
Which do you think, either, neither, both, is more effective?
Oh gosh. Well, I think from a more general perspective, cognitive behavioral therapy is very, very effective. Specifically, dialectical behavioral therapy was designed to treat borderline personality disorder. So DBT is kind of, it's a more specific treatment, where CBT is just, you can do that with anybody.
And CBT is, I go and I talk to my therapist, and he or she tells me maybe I'm thinking about this particular thing
Sure.
in the wrong way.
Sure, let's change the way you think about this.
And-
Let's change the way you behave around this.
And DBT is more an assessment of an acute thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, the DBT is like let's break out the 12 weeks of this workbook and let's make your life now consists of DBT training. It is a very dedicated long-term process.
Okay.
To treat, originally designed to treat the borderline personality disorder.
Which, for people that don't know, including myself, how would we define that?
Oh,
Isn't that a constellation of bad behaviors?
It's a big diagnosis. The original the original borderline from the analytical perspective was the pendulum goes between neurosis and psychosis. So whichever way the pendulum's going, you're
Is
out
it
there.
true that more women have borderline personality disorder?
Yeah, there's stuff about that. Yeah.
And then men would have narcissistic
Or antisocial.
or antisocial?
I mean, it's possible for there to be a man with borderline personality disorder.
Sure.
I've seen a few. But that condition is. It takes a long time to treat that.
Is
a
that because
powerful
the
condition.
sufferer has some sort of corrupted view of
It's just
themselves?
It's just from the longest toenail to the tallest hair on the head. It's a struggle.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
But do people recover from it?
Absolutely.
And there's hope for them.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I don't want to seem too negative.
I was listening to the new Bjork album this morning. We'll plug that too. The
Both
new
of them,
Bjork
yeah.
album. Yeah, it's beautiful. She talks about hope is a muscle. Hope is a muscle. So we strengthen the muscle. So there is hope
Springs
for all of us. For all of us. So practice your hope muscle. Work your hope muscle.
Well, the other fascinating thing
Okay.
that you have said is that you have a genuine IOP system for people with codependence issues.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, we're going to put them through the same thing that we put the clients will go through the same program because
If a
what
person
treats-
is out there suffering and they think, I wonder if that's my problem, describe the typical codependent.
God. I wish Carver was here. Carver, I wish you were here with me right now because I said a few weeks ago, I can't say where I said it, but I said, I'll give you $100,000 if you can define codependency. This is the most, for me at least, it's the most slippery thing in the world. But here's the truth about codependency. You know it when it's happening. If you're well, you know it when it's happening. And if you're well, you know it when it's around
This is
you.
like the definition of pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah, that is one of the more mystifying things I have ever encountered. And that's why I wanted to be, that's why I want to help with it, is because it is, I called it, I just kind of made that up earlier when I said it's the sleeping giant. It is, for me personally, and just what I've observed and treated, it is just it's just unfortunate. It's so unfortunate.
If one side of the coin is codependence,
Okay.
is the other side narcissism?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. No, I don't want to go that complicated. Mm-hmm. One side of the coin is codependency, and the other, let's just say the other side of the coin is the ability to be peaceful. I don't because I don't know. I like to think that on one side of the coin are all of my unfortunate qualities, but I can flip that coin and and it lands on the other side, and on that other side is me, just having worked hard on myself, and practice self-care, and the other side of that coin is just me knowing what to do about everything on the other side of that coin.
Intuitively knowing how to handle situations.
Yeah, because if I don't want narcissism to be on the other side of the coin.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, look, believe me, I'm certainly welcome to you saying, no, I don't know if that's true. But I was sitting there thinking, like, when you try to get sober yourself, that's probably not going to work out well if you don't have some help. If you tried to remedy your codependence on your own, you're probably going to end up being equally flawed, but just in a more narcissistic way, as opposed to rendering yourself available for all forms of abuse by people around you.
There you go.
Describe for us what someone who suffers from. Give us some general characteristics. What are the things that somebody says on your couch and you think, I think you might have?
A preoccupation with someone else's behaviors. A preoccupation bordering on obsession with someone else's behaviors. Micromanaging someone else's life. Your feeling of joy inextricably connected to someone else's feeling of joy. Your feeling of neurosis or anxiety, of depression, inextricably connected to a loved one's feelings of whatever. Mimicking their feelings, feeling their feelings, feeling for someone else.
Do you think this is promoted by social media use?
Oh my God. I think it has to, yeah, of course.
I've been, it should come as no surprise that I like listening to podcasts.
Sure, me too.
So, Abigail Shrier, I think is how you say her name, was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and she was talking about the prevalence of self-harm amongst young girls.
Okay.
Now, Denise Marsters and I briefly spoke about this, and she said that she had seen a fairly alarming increase in the rates of that. And I wonder if, because I've experienced this on a much smaller scale. So the very first post I put on Facebook that I was starting this podcast had, in my estimation, exceptionally favorable response.
Yes.
And I can remember looking at the number of likes and getting a sense of self-worth from it.
Sure.
And I don't know that I would have been in tune with that had I not listened to Abigail Shrier, who has a book that I can't think of the name, but I promise you, Aunt Brandy, I'll link it at the bottom. I'm writing it on my list here. I would not have been in tune with that had I not listened to her on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about children, and not just very younger kids, but especially women who, through Instagram, have been conditioned to evaluate their self-worth by how many likes and retweets and shares.
And I'm afraid that that's going to be this evolving, nuanced sect of codependency that's directly related to this massive emergence, this quick emergence of social media. That's going to be, or it is, and will continue to be, just a very nuanced.
Well, such a double-edged sword, because here I am shit-talking social media, and after you leave, I'm going to post this on social media.
Yeah, I think we just got to evolve with it. It's tough.
It really is.
That's tough.
I know this is kind of getting maybe a touch far afield, but for anybody that's curious about it, and certainly you, do you know who Jaron Lanier is?
No.
All right. Jaron Lanier is singularly the most interesting person I think alive.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's as interesting as Elon Musk is.
Okay.
So he's generally known as the godfather of virtual reality.
Okay.
He is a computer scientist, and he has lots of speeches that he has given. You can watch them on YouTube. So that's Jaron Lanier, that would look like Lene, or in French, Alanier.
Okay.
Now, if you can get beyond how the dude looks, because he's odd.
Okay.
He's a great big old fat person with crazy dreadlocks. He's white, and he plays ancient musical instruments. But the man is endlessly interesting.
Wow.
Endlessly
Wow.
interesting. And he talks about the damage that social media has done and how it has corrupted society.
Sure.
And he wrote a book, his most famous book. He's written a bunch, but his most famous one was, why you should delete your Facebook account or something like that. But to listen to him tell the history behind how social media grew and developed is endlessly interesting.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that once a person has been conditioned to value themselves
Yes.
Directly proportional
Yes.
to the
Yes.
external value they're receiving,
Yes.
is going to work to their detriment.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I don't.
Look, I love nothing more than when somebody agrees with me.
I mean, that just sounds awful, but true. Capital T, true. Yeah, that's what's
Capital
happening.
T.
That's what's happening. That's what's happening.
What do you think are ways that Susie, she's just
Susie,
graduated
yeah.
from Lighthouse Healing, and she's feeling good about herself. Well, I don't know of any PTSD meetings or codependence meetings.
I mean, see, there you go. That's
How does somebody continue their growth? How do they continue?
I think we, as a recovery community, and here's when I speak to the recovery community, we should look deeper into Codependence Anonymous. I think a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorder, especially family-related post-traumatic stress disorder, benefit from adult children of alcoholics. I think ACA is a good group for people Susie, when you graduate from the program, give ACA a try. Whether or not you had...
Are there ACA meetings around
Absolutely, absolutely, everywhere.
Somebody could find that information on Google.
Somebody could find that information on Google. Adult Children of Alcoholics meetings in Jackson, Mississippi, or in the Jackson, Mississippi area. That's a powerful program.
I've heard the argument that all people in AA should also go to Al-Anon.
Yeah, and if Al-Anon doesn't work for you, all people in AA should go to ACA.
Yeah.
But especially those for whom childhood trauma, adolescent trauma, adult trauma was a part of your experience. Give ACA a try alongside AA, and I think you'll meet some common spirits.
As you trudge the road of happy destiny.
Indeed. That's right. That's right. So yeah, that's where I would direct someone. But I also think that Codependent Anonymous would be a great. I think we should start one. And if there's already one, I'm so sorry that I'm unaware of it and can't promote it. But yeah, that's where I would implore Susie Jones. As part, I would refer to those resources during the program, so that she would know precisely where to go. Poor Susie.
All right. Unless you're getting tired.
I'm not getting tired.
Okay.
Let's go.
This is a little bit of a different topic. Jumping
Do it.
horses.
Do it.
So I have been to Bridge to Recovery's IOP.
Okay.
For substance abuse.
Awesome.
And whilst there,
Yep.
The first time I've really been in any kind of group setting where people had as their primary dysfunction, an eating disorder. All right. If people with eating disorders or sex addictions can be taught how to do those things in a healthy way,
Yeah.
without them leading to problematic behaviors, why don't mental health professionals help somebody have a glass of wine at night?
Oh, God.
I mean, I can intuit why.
Okay.
And I know why I
Okay.
can't have a glass of wine at night. But why is there no... Because a person could benefit from the relaxing effects of one glass of wine at night.
Ooh, this is when addiction becomes this anomaly. Harm reduction doesn't work for alcoholism or substance use disorder. It just doesn't. Because here's my response. I've been to hundreds of AA meetings. I've seen thousands of people come in and out. I've never met the person who was forced to get sober, for example, went to AA, stayed in AA, experienced the joy of recovery. I've never met the person who did that. Let's say Susie.
Susie. She's back at it.
Susie's sober. Susie's gone through these. Susie went to Bridge to Recovery and finished their program. And Susie also was referred to us at Lighthouse Healing Center. Susie went through 2 programs. Susie is doing well. Let's say Susie had cocaine use disorder, alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder, anorexia nervosa. Poor Susie, right?
Yeah.
Let's say she had borderline personality disorder too. Let's say we treated all of this.
And an ingrown toenail.
Ingrown toenail. Yeah. She had all that stuff. And Susie, and all the while, we're like, Susie, she's practiced abstinence. Let's say Susie did all that stuff. Susie's out of treatment. Susie's going to ACA. Susie's going to AA. Susie's in recovery. So Susie's one of these people who, if she drinks, she goes crazy, for lack of a better way to put it. Because that's what happens when I drink.
Yeah.
When I drink, I go crazy. So I've never met a person like Susie who does all that stuff, goes to AA, let's say she spends 5 years in AA, doing everything. I've never met someone...
Sponsor, going
everything. I've never met somebody at that 5-year mark, drinks. Let's say Susie chooses to drink that 5 years. Drinks for 6 months. Okay, I've never met this person. It's important to reiterate that over. I've never met this person. 5-year mark, Susie drinks. She comes back 6 months later, walks in the room and says, I've got great news, y'all. I've been drinking for 6 months, and it's amazing. Amazing. I've never met that person. I've only met the person, bless your heart, Susie, who did that, drank 6 months later. And if she comes back, she says, invariably, it was the worst thing that's ever happened. It was terrible. It was the worst thing that's ever happened. Everything I experienced, I was convinced that was the worst thing that's ever happened, but no, this was.
Well, the reason I asked that, because I know somebody's listening thinking, that Drew's up, he's trying to figure out how he can get that wine at night. But I was thinking about the line out. So before every AA meeting,
Science has one day
may one day
hasn't
done so yet. And I wonder if because one of the main reasons I want to have a physician on here is so that I can quiz them on is addiction rooted in an architectural defect of the mind, or is it a combination of poor responses to stimulus? And why isn't there? I mean, I
Yes.
get that
that.
there's a difference between drinking and eating, and I get that there's a difference between consuming alcohol and having sex. Certainly you are never ever gonna sell the argument. Well, they just need to have no sex for the rest of their life. You're not going. That's not going to be successful. And I mean, you got to eat. So I get that you have to engage in some of those behaviors, and you do not have to engage in consuming
Yes.
Substances that have addictive potential. So, like, look, when that Demi Lovato had that interview a couple years ago and said she was California sober, that she smoked weed, I thought TikTok. It's just a matter of time before the wheels come off this.
That was a shitty thing to do, right? Because we're up against something that we know how to treat, but we don't know why it is the way that it is precisely. I think we know that it's connected to impulsivity. I think we know that it's a chronic relapsing brain disease. I think we know so much about it, but science has not accomplished that pill, right?
My friend Billy used to say that if they came up with a
It'd take like 10 of them.
He'd shoot it up.
Yeah, he'd abuse it. But I think where it gets interesting is the solution holds a lantern toward the spiritual continuity of oneself. And what I mean by that is like you go and you hear about the solution being of a spiritual nature. And once you go there, if we do it, I don't want to say right, but if we turn ourselves over to that process, the why of it becomes irrelevant. Or that it did for me. I think part of the solution is to become so spiritually I want a better word than healthy. Spiritually
beneficial,
sound. I don't know. Just so spiritually lived that it doesn't even matter why it's the way that it is. It just
where do you help your patients
Okay.
draw the line between the needless reflection on the impetus for the problem and the appropriate assessment of how they may respond poorly to that stimulus?
That's a good question.
Because there is a difference between being obsessed with why. And I think I suffered under the delusion that I needed to hammer down this why. Because neither of my parents had addiction problems. They're honest, hardworking people who always came home when they said they were coming home and always did what they said they were going to do. So I get that we may never know exactly why, but there certainly is some utility in looking at our past responses to things in the hopes that we can respond better the next time. How do you help your patients tease that out?
Gosh, that's a $60,000 question. What a good question. I want people to experience enough spiritual health that they can be completely and totally satisfied by coming back to the breath and just being present, being here with life as it is, not as we think it should be. So how do we get them there? Oh gosh, we love them, we love on them, we introduce them to good people. oh gosh, we foster that spiritual connection, because that spiritual connection is what makes relationships powerful. It's what makes relationships better. It's what makes us know whether or not we need to be in this relationship. And that all goes back to, for me, getting in touch with the deepest stuff. And maybe that's where the mystery of addiction lies. I don't know. But it's just, I'm a depth therapist. I'm an analytical therapist, Jungian psychoanalytic person. So I'm all, the rules of depth psychology is once you go deep, go deeper. Once you reach depth, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper,
Isn't
go deeper.
that, I intuit that there is a difference between I go and I meet with my therapist and I sit there and she asks some questions or he asks some questions and I talk about it.
Yeah.
And then as opposed to Freudian psychoanalytics, you're lying on a couch. And tell me more about that. Tell me
Well,
more.
I encourage all of my clients to start recording their dreams and dream analysis. A good day in the office for me, a meaningful day in the office for me is 6 out of the 7 people brought their dreams in. And we looked at the dreams. We analyzed the dreams. One of the groups at Lighthouse Healing Center is a dream group. And it's Carl Jung said the dream will never lie to you. And I believe that. And Besel van der Kolk, like the premier...
This is pitted firmly against sometimes a flower's a flower. So how do we extract meaning from this?
From the dream?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that there is something that is a part of us that is always alive, always awake, always doing something? And I'm not talking about ego. I'm not talking about what I deliberately, consciously do, because ego goes to sleep every night and something else happens that is very mysterious, very relevant, very consistent. We dream 3 to 5 times a night. What is that? That's more interesting for me. That's more interesting than why we do the things that we do. Like, I want to dig in to that story that's taking place when ego shuts off. I want to look at that information, because everything I've studied, everything I've read says that there's something to that. And that Jung quote, the dream will never lie to you, just, I don't know. I guess after having worked with so many people in dreams and having had just these pronounced, profound, revelatory experience with people, just by looking at, a seemingly
dreams obviously serve some evolutionary purpose, or we wouldn't have them.
Sure.
I mean, I don't believe that we have them by accident.
Yeah, and I don't believe that they're prophetic. So let's not not go there.
No, but I think, I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting when, just you were saying, there's some parts of us that don't ever fall asleep. I believe, I don't know if there's any way to prove this, that we never really forget anything.
It's all
because
there.
I can have a dream.
Yeah, it's all there.
And like I did last night, where I was in a friend of mine's house that I have not set foot in, and I know 20 years, and I had crystalline recall of what the cookie jar looked like.
Sure.
And details that I never in a million years could have identified outside of that.
Sure.
So, do you think that they are a way, if we can figure out, I know this is venturing off into purely subjective territory from a scientific standpoint, if we can figure out how to interpret those dreams, you're saying that we can help identify those things that we're trying to work through?
So I think healing, the objective, the purpose of healing is for the individual to obtain, experience, if you will, a deeper understanding of who they are. And so we got a couple of relevant resources. We've got the ego experience, which is what I'm conscious of, what I choose to do. Like that helps us get that deeper understanding of who we are. But then we have this other source of information, and that's what it is. That's what the dream is information about who you are, to be concretized with what we deliberately choose to experience, to go deeper.
Do healthier or healing people dream differently from sick people?
No. Well, yeah, maybe, but it's so unpredictable. It's so unpredictable. Like medicines affect dreams. Chemicals affect dreams.
Outside of that.
Well, there's research about schizophrenic dreaming that is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I would say that there are schizophrenic dreams, for example, that are very different.
Are you talking about dreams had by people with
schizophrenia?
Yeah, absolutely. Or are you talking about
no, yeah.
There's a class of dreams.
No. For example, dreams had by schizophrenic people are like you're cautioned to interpret those.
Yeah. I get that.
But Susie, Susie. I would work with her on her dreams. I would encourage Susie Jones, was that?
Yeah. To be mindful of them.
Yeah. To record her dreams as a practice. Yeah, because it's information. Information. All of this stuff. Science. What's science? Information. What's anything? Information, right? So there's
a certain. And I guess this is because I'm a linear thinker.
Sure.
And I like syllogisms and, I need if A, then B. And
Come on.
So science promotes that which is provable. So how do we, I hate to fall back on.
Come on, do it.
I don't know that I like the argument dreams are inherently irrelevant because they're not testable, because they obviously serve some purpose.
Absolutely.
So how do we not take this to the extreme?
You got to be careful. You can't be an idiot about it. But all of us know what it's like to practice suspension of disbelief. All of it's no.
Well, Susie comes to you, and she's a few weeks into this, and she had a dream the night before where she was trapped in a vending machine.
Yeah.
Or
and
what do you tell her?
The dream is not rational. Ego is rational. But Jung had this word numinous. Numinous. That is a badass word. Numinous is not rational. One of the definitions of numinous is irrational. Not this is stupid, but it's coming from a non-rational place.
It's a flawed argument.
No, it's not. It's not. That's where we want to take it. But irrational is not rational in that it's not ego. Ego is rational. Ego, A plus B equals C. Okay. Ego, linear thinking, intellectual. Ego, not inflated ego, deflated ego, just what I'm conscious of. Ego wants things to make sense.
I may need a better vocabulary here. So tell me, when you're talking about ego in a way that
I'm talking
not
the Latin
cocksure.
Ego is Latin for I, me.
It is how I.
It is
me.
View
the world.
It is me right now. I am ego right now, and now ego is inflated. Ego is deflated.
I'm better than,
or I'm worse than. But ego is what I choose to do.
The common denominator
consciousness. Consciousness.
It is only how I am perceiving the world.
Consciousness. Ego is consciousness. Now the flip side of that is unconscious. And Jung had this place.
The dream state.
The dream state. But also psyche, body, emotion.
What is working in the background? What
is working all around, beneath, all the time. All the time. So there's some really good information in there. Good information in there.
So
spirituality, spirit.
I have described the delayed response thing that I was talking about earlier about moving back to Jackson and seeing people.
Okay.
I have likened it to the background processes that run in a computer.
Okay.
Like seeing that person,
Okay.
seeing that thing, feeling that thing, just turned on this background program that I didn't even know was running. And
That's
it's
unconscious.
like a Trojan horse. It's going to cause me problems in, like I've lit a fuse. The fuse might be 10 minutes or it might be 10 days long, but it's going to cause a problem. So is this comparable to what you're saying?
That information is beyond ego. You know, you said
operating, and I don't even realize.
Operating, I don't even realize. Where is it? And I know this may sound crazy, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. It's
look, it's
I'm
my
not.
Podcast, and
It's not. It's not right here, right now. So if it's not right here, right now, it's somewhere else.
So Susie comes and tells you about her dream.
Okay.
Her dreams.
Yep.
And then what do you hope? What do you hope to help her glean from them?
I would say let's look. Okay, I would instruct, recommend, suggest with a lot of like this is kind of true, that the dream doesn't speak in a rational language. The dream speaks in a symbolic language. A dream is a myth. We've been telling stories for thousands, and we've been telling the same stories for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Where did those stories come from? Well, probably dreams. The earliest myths were so dense and rife in symbolism, and we continued to do that. We continue to do that. We continue to do that. So that's how we look at the dream. The dream is a myth. The same way that Prometheus is a myth. The same way that Zeus, Hades, Hypnos, Thanatos.
So you use it.
Yes, it's a myth.
You would talk
it's
to
a story.
Susie in a way
Your
for
dream
her
is telling you a story. Let's look at that.
about
who
I have
you
always
are.
interpreted mythology.
Sure.
I love reading
Sure.
my kids stories about
Yes.
Greek mythology. They eat it
Yeah.
up. At St. James, they have a
The labyrinth, yes,
and I
yes.
can remember walking
Yeah.
my oldest
Come on.
son around there.
Yeah.
So, they all come from a place
Yeah.
that I believe is intended to explain the human condition
Mm-hmm.
in a very
The collective unconscious is what you want to call
a
it.
very basic way. Fear, desire, and I don't mean just lust. I mean desire. Period.
Yeah.
Be envisioning a way to have characteristics that will always be unachievable.
Sure.
Flight.
Sure.
Trying to make sense out of things
Yes.
before there was science or
Yes.
testable methods.
Yes.
So you will take Susie's dreams and help her to apply them in a way that helps her make sense of those very basic human condition problems.
Because Susie, you've never had this dream before. You've never had this dream before. I would even go as far as to say, "Hey Susie, let's practice some suspension of disbelief for a moment." Or I would say, "Hey Susie, do you believe in God?" And let's say she said, "Absolutely." And I would say, "Susie, why did God give you this dream? Last night of all nights, why would God provide you with this information?" Because it is. It's just information.
Well, this is a much
whether you
easier
like it or
argument to have with Susie when she believes in God. Because if she's a Christian, then we can build on the nothing happens by mistake. Everything happens for a reason.
Even if she's not a Christian, I'll say, come on. You saw. I heard Robert Duvall say one time that every time he is preparing for a role, he turns himself over to an imaginary set of circumstances. Everybody knows how to do that.
Yes.
Everybody saw Empire Strikes Back and thought Yoda was just amazing. They were scared of Darth Vader. So I want to get them in touch with that. It's like, Susie, I know you're a practicing atheist or whatever you are, but there is a part of you that connects to fantasy because, Susie, you have a favorite story. You have a favorite story. You have a favorite song. You have a favorite whatever that you feel at depth, right? So, Susie, I'm going to ask you to get in touch with that for a moment and just roll with me. Practice that suspension of disbelief because you have an imagination It's part of that non-rational space. It's not ego. Ego is not imagination. Imagination is right there alongside spirit, psyche, in that numinous space. So, Susie, roll with me for a second. Let's practice suspension of disbelief. Act as if.
How does that make Susie healthier?
Because Susie is faced with brand new information about who she is that we can tease out into a deeper understanding of who she is.
It helps her build
everybody
a
wants
healthier definition of herself.
of self, a more meaningful definition of self to be applied to the significant relationships in her life. What's better? What makes more sense than a slowly evolving, deeper understanding of who we are? Like that, like when it's all said and done, that's not impulsive. That's not too much. That's perfect. A slow, unfurling, deeper understanding of who we are. That's I think that's perfect. I think that's everything.
That's good.
A deeper
Kind of
understanding.
chipping away until we...
This is life, man.
Yeah.
This is life. It happens. It happens fast, but it also happens very, very slowly. Very, it very slowly unfolds.
Well, and it seems like it never ends. I mean, we're always...
Always
even-
got something to work with.
I'm much older now than I
Yeah.
was when I first began my journey of recovery, and I'm still improving.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think, Susie, I think it's pretty cool that something's telling you a story. Something, you're not choosing the story. Something's telling you a story. That's crazy.
We're very much...
That's crazy.
as much as we are benefactors, we can be victims of our dreams.
Absolutely.
You have absolutely no way to control it.
No way at all. No way. No way. I mean, yeah, this lucid dreaming thing, but for the most part, yeah. I can't say I'm about to dream about being stuck in a vending machine. It's not going to happen.
Well, just whatever.
No, exactly. But that's probably happened to somebody. They probably had that dream. So I like to work. Ideally, I work with that psychological unconscious and that body unconscious. Because Carl Jung said, the dream will never lie to you. And Besel van der Kolk, the premier kind of trauma...
What is that name?
Besel the body keeps the score. Most people have heard.
B-E-S-E-L.
Bessel van der Kolk. He's Dutchman. He's got the body keeps the score. He said the body will not lie to you. The body will give you the information that you need. The dream will give you the information that you need. So in my private practice and in our outpatient practice, we want to work with psychological unconscious and body unconscious. We want to work with the body. We want to work with the psychology.
Well, and we can wrap it up after this point, unless you're fatiguing.
Hey, let's keep... Hey, man, I can do this all day.
Okay. So, I have noticed that you have mentioned umpteen times now about spiritual practices, God, but because we don't know each other. So, I've been to treatment a handful of times, and out of desperation, or maybe it was God's will, the last time I went to treatment was a faith-based treatment center. And how my road led there was, lack of opportunities. The first time you go to treatment, you go to Copac, and you go to Baptist, and you go to Palmetto, and the ranch.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you're at, where the hell can I find somewhere to sleep?
Yeah.
And I didn't even know there was a faith-based system of treatment centers.
Sure.
And so, as I was reflecting to my wife last night, the place that I went is hyper fundamentalist.
Okay.
Like when you're withdrawing from heroin, you were told You need the Holy Ghost. You don't need medication.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
The 12 steps are condemned. You need Jesus.
Okay.
So I have always felt like I needed the strong magnet of that hyper fundamentalism to pull me into a place where I could believe in the benefit of faith as a larger institution. So how does a person go about? I mean, I have been a professed agnostic before. I don't know that I would be so bold as to say I was an atheist.
No, I don't have the guts.
Because that takes, a bit of conviction that I think fails for a number of reasons. But what are the ways that a person can contend with their problems with God, their fear of the judgment of their childhood religious life? How can they benefit and what is the nature of that benefit? Is it helping us construct a moral scaffolding for our life? I mean, you were talking about the chipping away and exposing who we truly are, or how we can live our most authentic lives. How does belief help us?
Because you can believe in whatever you want to believe in. You can believe in whatever you want to. Okay, so if you're anything like me, when you got sober, you felt indoctrinated by this word powerlessness.
Yes.
You felt I felt I was like, shit, I don't control it. Well, that's kind of scary, but okay, I'll roll with it.
I think it's a hopeless feeling. Until you realize that you're not powerless over what you do.
Here's where I'm going with that. Like, I eventually discovered 3 things. I can only find 3 things that I am absolutely not powerless over. And those 3 things have guided me.
Come on, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
So I was indoctrinated in powerlessness, which is like, shit, I'm screwed. I'm just gonna keep coming back. First thing that I found, that I have complete and total authority and control. I'll use that word.
It's almost a 4-letter word.
That's a tough word. I feel that word throughout my whole body. Control. I can control. I get to choose what to do with my thoughts. I don't always get to choose what to think about, because thoughts just occur. But 100% of the time, I get to choose what to do with my thoughts. I control that. Right? Mm-hmm. Second thing that I have 100% control over, I get to believe in whatever I want to believe in. Now, maybe I need to be careful there, but I have complete and total control over that. And I get to treat people however I choose to treat them. Everything else is, it's out there, man. No control over. Complete and total powerless over everything except...
How I treat people, how I respond to my thoughts.
No, I choose what to do with my thoughts. I get to choose what to do with my thoughts. I get to choose 100% of the time. I get to believe in whatever I want to believe in. And I get to treat you right now however I choose to do so. That's it. I can't, and I've tried. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books about whatever, fiction, nonfiction, and that's what I found. So this thing about belief, this thing about constructing a way of life that is good, right? Using the word good in the most profound way. That is just good. Inarguably good. I'll just tell you what I do. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a daily practice of meditation. 30 minutes. 30 minutes of meditation a day.
You listen to a Tibetan
No,
bowl?
God,
or
no.
what?
I sit there and I am with this.
As an aside, I should say for the man or woman out there, if you can't do 30 minutes, do 3.
Oh, do one. No. I'm making. Yeah, don't
30.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I mean,
Olympic level.
that was, that's over here, like when I started. Yeah. But I'm just telling you
I
what
want to
I
hear
do.
about it. What do you do every day?
I 30 minutes of meditation. I run 6 days a week. I put myself in cold water, very cold water, 3 or 4 days a week. I put myself in the sauna.
A friend of mine did a documentary of Wim Hof, by the way.
Oh, brother Wim Hof. That's a good dude. That's a good dude. He's a neat guy. I move my body. Running has become, a form of meditation for me. Running is the only thing that I've found, and I tried to find this in meditation, like sitting still meditation, but running is the only thing that just washes my thoughts. It's like a dishwasher for my thoughts. So the runs, like start out, I think about all this stuff, and the thoughts go where they're supposed to go, and then
I shouldn't be
running.
surprised that you're into the ice bath thing, given you seem to have a natural bent towards this mind-body connection.
That's and with the program with the Lighthouse Healing Center, we have a very expensive ice machine.
Yeah.
And we put all that ice, a bunch of that ice in water, and people get in it and they
change.
change.
A couple weeks ago, because I have a buddy from Hattiesburg that's big into the ice bath thing.
Yeah.
It's not for recovery purposes, but just more of the natural healing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean there's absolute benefit to it.
Yeah. Earlier I mentioned that post-traumatic stress disorder, eating disorder, for example, the individual does not have a good relationship with his or her body, or they have no relationship with his or her body. Let me tell you right now, practicing that ice bath, you will indeed not only have a relationship with your body, but you will trust your body, because your body does precisely what it's supposed to do when you get in that cold water. It's cold. But back to the question you have
Belief
about
and faith
the belief,
and,
faith. I mean, there was an interview with Corman McCarthy, maybe 2000.
There aren't many of them. It had to be the one with
Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey interviewed Corman McCarthy, and she asked him if he believed in God. And he looked at her and he said, "It depends on which day of the week you ask me."
Look, I could talk about Corman McCarthy forever.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
For those curious, Drew does have a favorite book of all time.
Suttree?
It is Blood Meridian.
Oh, yeah, I read it 5 times.
It is.
Oh, God.
There's nobody like him.
There's nobody like him.
And to buttress that argument, Harold Bloom from Yale says the greatest living author is Corman McCarthy.
He's got 2 novels coming out.
I know. I'm super excited. Yeah. He's supposed to have a woman in one of them.
Yeah. Stella Maris, finally. Right. Yeah. So faith. I mean, depends on which day of the week you ask me. God, depends on which day of the week you ask me. But yeah, something's happening, man. Something's happening, and it's very interesting.
It is. There's too much benefit to be had. I loved Christopher Hitchens. And, he's a pretty biting,
like Martin Amos.
Yeah, exactly. A pretty biting atheist, and I don't know. I think that Christopher Hitchens largely had a problem with organized religion.
Sure.
As opposed to the benefit that one can glean from thinking about things in a more cornball to say a more spiritual manner, but
it works.
I think that's it.
The word fits.
And I think that one thing that I've learned is never to stop looking for new things to learn.
I love it.
I mean, I may focus the majority of my day based around Christian principles, but I promise you, if I read something beneficial in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm down
putting
with
it in there. I'm putting
yeah.
I'm putting it. That's
I mean,
that's the
I'm on
I pick from everything and just if it.
Belief is a patchwork quilt, and so is recovery for that matter.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So yeah, that's a beautiful question, and it.
How do you, Susie just came to you yesterday, and last night was her first night in IOP, and you want to help Susie grow her faith practice. What do you, where's your go-to step 1 or step 0.25?
Faith practice. That's one of those words that
Anything, believe, whatever you want to call it. How do you help, better stated, what is step 1 for Susie to grow a spiritual practice, a spiritual life, a spiritual belief system, anything?
That is such a good question. That is such a good question.
You gonna tell her, look, go down to Lemuria and get the Tao of Pooh? Or you gonna tell her,
I would okay.
just breathe 5 times?
I would invite her to. I would say, Susie, I want you to try something. I want you to sit completely still. I want to invite you to sit, and I would invite her to do it right then and there. I would say, Susie, sit. Let's sit completely still for 30 seconds. Let's not move. Let's not talk. Just sit completely still and experience that. That's where I'd start. And I would hope that in doing that, she would feel safe. And if we're going with the story we concocted for Susie, she hadn't felt safe ever. I would hope that Susie felt safe in stillness, even for half a second. Because it might freak her out at first because, she's one with all the fears and thoughts and like, oh my God, if I sit still, I'm going to explode. But maybe, just maybe, there would be a microsecond where she felt safe.
I have, since we've spoken about Lemuria so many times, I don't have a origin story that is born out of abuse or neglect of any kind.
Yeah, I don't either.
And the very first time I saw Brian O'Shea
I love Brian.
post
my
on
dear friend.
Facebook that he said, I went for a walk today, felt good,
I love it.
felt safe.
Love it.
And I thought,
he does say that.
That is
a walk, a good, beautiful walk.
I
on this
would
cool
not have
morning.
even thought about that. And I wonder how many times I have reacted poorly to something because I did not feel safe.
There you go.
In some fashion.
There you go. There you go.
So I thought Susie would benefit from that 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
And I benefited. Brian, if you ever listen to this, I love you, man. You're
I love
a
you too,
guy.
bro. I love you
Sweet
too.
man.
I love you so much, bro. Yeah. Yeah, safety. And that's where, this body, spirit, whatever you want to call it, soul, psychology, psychology, the study of the soul, psychopathology, an expression of the suffering of the soul. I mean, so soul's there, whether you like it or not, folks, even in the Word. That's all. What is that? What is a deeper understanding meant for? To feel safe in your body, to feel safe in your mind, just to feel safe, and Thich Nhat Hanh really nailed me with this one, because I used to pray for peace, for example, until I read Thich Nhat Hanh say, if you want peace, be peaceful.
Be peace, yeah.
Be peaceful. Be peaceful. So I was like, okay, what does that mean for me? Oh, that means I can walk slowly. That means I can speak gently. That means I can come back to the breath whenever I choose to. Whenever I choose. So these days, if I want peace, I'm going to be peaceful.
Thich Nhat Hanh is that's PhD level.
Oh, that's as good as
Look, I tried to read Eckhart Tolle's book one time, or one of them, and I thought, I legit don't understand a single thing he just said.
But read Thich Nhat Hanh, you understand what he says. I think it's simplistic, it's simplified, it's such beautiful, simple practice. Yeah, that's why it spoke to me so much. I studied Western philosophy as an undergrad, so Western philosophy is nothing but ideas, great ideas, but you get into that Eastern stuff, and it's about practices. It's about demystifying ideas into, hey Susie, let's sit still.
Well, I think that I like that you said that about because there is a component of like the fundamentalist system that I went into stands in contrast to the idea of faith without works is dead.
Okay.
That everything that you can legitimately ask for it, and it just the Holy Spirit delivers it.
Sure.
And as opposed to this idea that I need to work towards something. One of my favorite, who's that? Father Martin has those Chalk Talk videos.
Oh, okay.
You don't know him?
Mm-mm.
He's on YouTube.
Okay.
Been around for a million years. He's a Catholic priest. And one of my favorite things he talks about is how God absolutely, if you have a toothache, God absolutely wants you to pray to him for help and healing with that toothache, but only if you're on the way to the dentist.
Yeah, there you go.
And I have always thought,
Yeah.
that there is some benefit to the putting the work in.
Yeah.
And the practice.
That's why I love the word practice. That's what I was just thinking. The word practice that's a good word. That's a good word. Yeah. Ideas are wonderful, but these days I try to put ideas into practice. And I try to encourage people that you can really demystify an idea by putting it into practice, and sit still or go for a run or get in an ice bath, whatever, and then something's going to happen. There'll be a deeper understanding of who you are. And sometimes
if you're exercising regularly,
Yep.
and being aware of these things, and
Yep.
thinking about these things, and giving some effort towards improvement, it's hard to believe that you would not realize that improvement.
Sure.
I mean,
It's a recipe for nothing but like new stuff, big new stuff,
I
deeper
think
understanding of who you are.
We all get stuck in wanting to know these absolutes. Like, if I do blah, blah, and blah, am I going to be happy? Or am I going to be safe? And it's hard to answer, but we can certainly say, well, the people that are safe generally all do these things.
That's right. People who are safe and healthy generally attribute some of that to spiritual practice, through physical practice, through working on good relational skills. The diet thing, I'm not touching that because I'm not good
Look,
at that.
I like my heavy cream, and I like my carbohydrates.
Yeah, I like pizza. Yeah, but yeah, I mean these healthy people. Look at what they do. It's nothing. It's not crazy. It's not.
And it's not unachievable.
It's not unachievable.
It's not beyond your reach.
No, not at all. It's totally doable.
Well, listen, man, this has been an infinitely interesting conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
But we are running.
Okay.
We're leaning towards the long.
We're leaning towards the
So,
long.
look,
Okay.
I absolutely love you.
Oh my
I
gosh.
appreciate you for coming
Thank
here.
you. Goodness gracious.
You are a new and worthy and awesome friend of the podcast and me.
Thank you. Let me
Personally.
get my
Yes, cheers.
lime, mint, elderflower, mineral water.
Can't beat it.
It's better than Jack Daniels in your coffee, isn't it?
Isn't it? All right, man. Let me turn this thing